Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday. This is your weekly dose of all things Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, books, movies, games, video games, board games, rumors, innuendos, dragon dice,
giant D20s.
D20 dice, and of course,
Yes, of course, Dragon Dice and Lord of the Rings gamers and gamers as well.
yes, and
There was a triple meaning in that, by the way. You guys can look for it. I didn't spell it out for you. It's onomatopoeia. You get it. You get it. Go ahead.
and for the last ever since 2020 began, it's become more of a tribute to all of the creative people that have supported Lord of the Rings over the year. Of course, we celebrate Tolkien's birthday in January, but then we
Always
lost
the 3rd of
Christopher
January.
Tolkien in late January, and then we've lost someone else now, and we're going to get into that later today, later in the show. My name
Orson
is
Bean.
Justin. That is Cliff.
Hello.
We're at Scum and Villainy, and we hope you can come to Hollywood and join us at Scum and Villainy. It is live and open to the public. They're setting up the bar right now. It is all ages. There's a kitchen, there's food, there's drink, there's merriment. It's dressed as Yu-Gi-Oh right now if you're into Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm watching the chat room right here.
Here's
I see
giant
everybody.
D20 you can roll when you get here.
I see Sarah Draper, who was just on the show a couple weeks ago.
That's
See,
true.
she came to L.A.
She was here live with us in this very
Yes,
room.
Sarah, you're wonderful. I see Arovandi, Margaret Gandalfide.
Hello, Ellen.
Susie Davis, Ellen.
Hello, everybody.
Ellen.
Nice to have you guys on the show with us. It's so
Brennan,
generous of you
I
to
love hearing
spend
you.
a lovely hobbity good afternoon with your friends and your family at theonering.net, your one-stop destination for all fans of J.R.R. Tolkien. Welcome to Ringer Fandom. Welcome to our weekly live stream. Excuse me.
And this
Broadcast
week,
from Scum and Villainy Cantina.
and we wanted to really get your interactive input. I'm watching the chat, so respond to us. You can also text us. The phone number below, that's a text number, and you can call us. Also, our Skype is open, so please, we want to hear your voices. We want to see your opinions, because it's 2020. Amazon's about to start production Lord of the Rings. We've got a long road ahead. The past is behind us, and the future's ahead of us.
Past is definitely. We've done enough looking into the past here. As the 2020 year has rolled over, we had to say farewell to Kobe Bryant as well, which made everyone in Los Angeles feel this strange shroud over the city.
Yes.
But the memorial services so recently were beautiful, beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful. And
they have tickets to the public memorial next week.
That's true, next week. And
for Kobe.
doesn't it
It's gonna
remind
be
you of the
huge.
time that Michael Jackson died? And,
Hi, Jill.
And Los Angeles also
Oh
found
yeah,
itself.
that's exactly how it feels.
It's exactly how it feels. And so now we've lost Orson Bean, and we've lost the great Christopher Tolkien, and now no more looking back. Now, indeed, it is a year of clear vision. It is
Clear.
It is a year of 2020.
A new vision.
And that means looking forward. So as we are forward-thinking, and forward-thinking indeed we are. Hello, good sir. Oh my God, look at this. All the staff of the bar coming into the shop. Now, we have to look forward to a lot of news and information coming out of New Zealand as they start the earliest wave of producing and making this pilot episode for as yet untitled. We don't even know if it's going to be called The Lord of the Rings Show on Amazon.
Right.
And I would highly doubt it's going to be called The Lord of the Rings Show on Amazon.
I disagree with that,
No,
but that's why we do the show.
Wait. Even from the titling, it's going to be some untitled Second Age Middle Earth
I don't think so.
extravaganza.
I don't think so.
And we're in the midst of deep wonderment and mystery because we really don't know what's going on down there.
Hi, Diane.
Except the most recent news, quite unfortunate, that a young stunt performer had been bodily damaged during her job doing a water stunt. And
For the new Lord of the Rings show.
That's right.
But before we get into all this breaking news,
I want to talk about the breaking news.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the OneRing.net's been around for 20 years, and
Indeed,
we've been
that's
on
true.
many different platforms. We had our own website that we built ourselves. Then we had a bulletin board,
Hi, Pipsky.
V Bulletin, and lots of messages and message boards.
Oh my gosh, it's Rocker Ben.
A while ago, it was Clifford's birthday, and I brought his belated birthday present. And now I have to get back to work. Bye!
Awesome.
Rocker Ben stopping by the shop, and he's gone.
Just like that.
Just like that. Wow. Whoa.
Well, what is it?
It's my late birthday present.
Can you
Do
open
know
it
what?
on the air?
Thank you. Can I say thank you, Ben? But he's gone.
He's
He is
gone.
now skateboarding down Hollywood Boulevard
There you go.
with all the other
I love
rock
this
and
town.
rollers. Well, it is a beautiful pin. This is a specialty cloison pin
Yes.
with the big heart shape, and there's Skeletor.
Skeletor.
Skeletor gaggling and laughing, and it says, "Live, laugh, love."
With
and
Skeletor.
It's with Skeletor cackling.
Oh my goodness.
That's brilliant.
No,
I think
it's-
this is totally,
oh,
this
wow.
is very twisted and surreal. Thank you, Ben, for crashing
And
the
you
show.
heard that Mark Hamill is going to play Skeletor in the new Netflix He-Man
He's
reboot.
doing the voice of in this new anime. It's not going to be like Western stylized.
It
they
is.
use the word anime,
No, it's animated by Titmouse in Los Angeles
but to look
for
like
Netflix.
Japanese styled anime.
It doesn't.
But it's still an
we're
American
not,
production.
We're not going to call this anime if it's
I'm not,
if
but
it's
they are.
directed and produced by Kevin Smith. It's
What?
animated by Titmouse in Los Angeles,
Which
and
is
it's
very
starring
exciting.
nothing but LA-based actors. There's nothing anime about this.
Then why is it Netflix is using that word specifically to market the whole thing?
They're not.
Yeah, they are.
No,
Yeah,
it's not
legit-
anime.
Have you seen it?
Have
They
you
had-
seen
they-
She-Ra?
Have you
She-Ra is not anime.
No, it's not. But they never called it that. Netflix never claimed it was that. Their new marketing campaign shows Castle Grayskull, and it says the title of the upcoming series
'Kay.
of Master of the Universe, and it's called an anime in their print ad. I don't know why they did
I
that.
Don't,
I don't know why they
think
did that,
that's
but they did that.
accurate. That's an abuse of the term.
It makes
and
me. I think it's going to be an all-American show. Obviously, here's the same thing that happened with
you don't have
Avatar.
to think. It's actually
No, it's a common confusion. Avatar: The Last Airbender was confused as an anime, and it never was.
Right.
So you're standing correctly on the point. It was an American production, styled to have those influences of anime. Maybe Netflix is trying to fish out their fishing line a little bit for that audience
Yes.
to get them interested in it. Maybe we'll find out. We'll find out when we get there.
Cliff,
When we get
enough
there.
about other stuff. Cliff,
Okay,
we had
okay.
a huge
That was a
debate.
sidetrack.
We had a huge debate on Twitter this weekend. Publicly, a bunch of other Tolkien accounts got into the debate. Internally, a lot of our staff members got in on the debate. And, I think valid points were brought up all around.
Oh, this quote-unquote conversation about whether or not John Ronald Reuel Tolkien actually was competitive and jealous of other authors in the marketplace.
Yes.
I wonder.
You wonder.
I wonder.
What do you mean
because
you wonder?
I wondered. I wonder how that conversation even started, but I was actually kind of fascinated by the research that was apparent on all sides of this conversation. I was really pleased to see many different voices come in and contribute all at the same time to get to the bottom of this purely intellectual supposition. How's that?
Yes.
How's that for a cold open?
Yes.
Yeah, it was an intellectual exercise, was it not? And yet it started with
This.
this.
All right. Now let's
It
bring
started
this
with the unpublished letter of John Ronald Reuel Tolkien,
He has published letters and he has unpublished letters.
which may come as a deeply eyebrow-raising moment, as it was for me.
Okay.
I was not aware until this.
All right.
That
So
there were unpublished letters
there are
that are
unpublished from
fully formed. There they are in full life. that
black
they
and
have
white,
not-
signed by Tolkien himself.
Not available in the printed edition that was edited by his biographer Humphrey Carpenter
So
and his family.
So Cliff,
This is a surprise to me, but here it is.
let
nonetheless.
me read what
here it is.
Tolkien wrote. So this is in response to someone Dune.
near
Frank Herbert's
near and dear
Dune.
to my heart, one of my favorite pieces of authorship, and probably the single greatest science fiction achievement in 20th century. Dune is, to me, an all-time favorite. And many people who are Lord of the Rings fans are also overlapped fully and completely with the same successful world building that Frank Herbert had on display. And yet, they're not separated apart like church and state. They're actually like together. Like,
yeah, there's a
I've-
Venn diagram
Oh, a
and there's a
big
big,
old-
cross section
huge,
between
just-
Lord of the Rings and Dune
in
fans.
fact, you can barely discern them as separate circles.
So let me set
There's
this.
so much common denominators.
So let
between
me set the
us
stage of
as
the
fans.
facts without opinion
Okay,
of
fair
the
enough.
facts. All right,
Yeah, and
here are the
that's-
facts.
I just want to clarify that
August,
I'm in both camps.
In August of 1965,
Yes.
after almost a year-long marketing and PR campaign, Frank Herbert published Dune, a brand new science fiction, unlike anyone had ever seen before. There was world building, and there was so much going on. They had done a great job seeding little parts of the stories of Dune for the whole year of 1965. And in August 1965, Frank Herbert published Dune.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yeah, by Chilton. In America, it was first published in hardcover by Chilton. If you have your hands on a dusty old library somewhere and you find a hardcover of Chilton Books, copy of Dune, the first one ever, keep your hands on it. It's priceless.
It's priceless.
It's priceless.
So one of the people involved with the publishing of the book, Dune, was
Arrakis,
Charles
desert planet. We're
Lanier.
talking Paul.
Hey, you're getting off the subject.
Charles
Lanier, right? Lanier.
Yes, that's
All right, was involved in the publishing, and he sent a copy to J.R.R. Tolkien as a fellow fantasy author, as a good faith, saying, "Hey, check out this new fantasy book. There's a lot of world building. I think you'll like it. I think you'll like it." All he did, that's all he did. The publisher of the book sent Tolkien a copy of Dune, as it was the most talked about upcoming book of 1965.
Indeed.
All right, that's where we're at. Tolkien writes a letter back. Let's take a look.
We're talking about the Paul Atreides story and all that stuff, in case
In
you guys don't know.
1965, Tolkien writes, "Dear Mr. Lanier, I received your book, Dune, just before I went abroad for a short while. Hence the delay in acknowledging it. I don't think I shall have the time to read it until I next get a holiday." Boy, so that he's basically told the publisher of Dune, "I'm not going to read this thing." And then there's a second letter, because Mr. John Bush, just 6 months later, sent him a copy
another
as well.
copy. Another copy.
A separate person, unbeknownst, sent another copy. And Tolkien writes to the second person, just 6 months later, after Dune had taken the world by storm, "Thank you for sending me a copy of Dune. I received one last year from Lanier, and so already know something about the book." That's basic. It is impossible for an author still writing to be fair to another author working along the same lines. At least I find it so.
In fact, I dislike Dune with some intensity. And in that unfortunate case, it is much the best and fairest to another author to keep silent and refuse to comment. Would you like me to return the book as I already have one, or hand it on?
Cliff.
Can you hear that Oxford professor talking?
Between those two letters,
wow,
he has dismissed Dune as something that I don't have time for. And then in the second letter, he says, "Here is a competitor in the marketplace writing in the same genre than I am, and I don't have time for it. In fact, I don't want it at all."
He actually thought it was unfair to be asked to be put in that position.
Really?
What is clear to me in reading Professor Tolkien's statement in that letter, and the audience just saw it right there, he felt put upon that somebody would ask him to drop what he was doing.
No time frame. Just saying, "Here's a book. I hope you catch up on it." It wasn't like, "Read this now."
No, but months later, he was sent another copy.
From another person who thought, "Hey,
who
this
may
is
actually have been related to the publisher. It may have been someone else at the publishing house.
Okay.
We don't know. I don't even know.
Okay.
But I do find it interesting that Professor Tolkien wanted to raise his hands and say, "It's not fair for me to comment on somebody else who's working in the same vein while I'm busy doing the same thing." And I'm like, he just didn't want to be bothered with that expectation, really. See what I mean?
Right.
What are you looking for another backup?
There's another tweet. There's another line that that Tolkien has.
Yes.
And Tolkien writes in another letter, "I think this prevents me from being a critic worth considering. As a rule, and it probably makes me at my worst when other writers' lines come too near, as yours does at time. there is liable to be a short circuit, a flash, an explosion, and even a bad smell, one ingredient of which may be mere jealousy. Still, it would be fairer to say of me, not that I tend to be imprisoned in my own taste, so much as to be burdened with my own small but peculiar message. So Tolkien himself writes the word jealousy.
Yep, and he also makes a statement to be insular. He prefers to work creatively in an insular manner without being influenced by somebody else who he said is getting too near. Quote, might get too near to what he's doing. He wants to be isolated from that influence and from that way of being perhaps put to the comparative level. To think that he would have to compare his, which is there that he did, and this other person's doing it the same manner in the same way and gets too near to what he's trying to do. Imagine wanting to not be diluted. Imagine or not wanting to be polluted rather by the influence of somebody else's work. I understand psychologically where Professor Tolkien is coming from, and his admitting jealousy and admitting the fire in his veins is that he wants to do something unique to himself. He also begs for the uniqueness of it to be his own. And that is an insular attitude that you'll find is common among a lot of artists and choreographers and painters and other artists who really like to work without being influenced by what other people in their sphere are actually doing along those lines.
There
a
are
lot
a
of people
ton of
don't want to be in
actors that don't want to
that.
see similar actor performances. There are a ton of actors that don't see their own movies because they don't want to see.
That's also true.
What's his name? Kylo Ren famously does not want to see any of his performances.
Yes, no, Adam has said
Adam
many
Driver.
times he does not want to see
So Tolkien
himself.
did not want to see any competition. And again, let me repeat what Tolkien himself just said. One ingredient of which may be mere jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien's own hand. Tolkien admits, I am a jealous man. But that's not the only reason.
He admits that he would like to avoid the potential for that quality to be elicited.
Yes.
He wants to avoid the entrapment of being jealous, which he knows he might likely respond to that way.
So
yes.
so the debate that happened very publicly on Twitter, and it was a great one, and I love to see scholarship presented
As do
on
I.
Tolkien. And in fact, there are people that get PhDs in Tolkien scholarship. He is that deep. But
yes,
the position that I took on Twitter was that Tolkien had a jealous tendency.
Just to say that was a position that one of our staff members at the time.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay,
so,
as long as we know that.
And we have a broad staff of opinions that share different opinions on the website, on Facebook, on Instagram, on the message boards. I am just one of many. So let's get some feedback from the hotline.
Let's do that, shall we?
Go ahead.
We're going to use this. All right, here.
Just
all right.
Speaker.
Hello there. You're live on thewondering.net. Where are you calling from?
Hey, Cliff, it's Brennan.
Hey,
Hello.
Brennan.
Brennan Marr.
How you doing?
So where do you stand on this debate? Was Tolkien a jealous man?
Well, I don't know about that, but I think it's ironic that in one review of Dune, Arthur C. Clarke said that he knew of no book that was like Dune except Lord of the Rings.
So indeed, you are.
That was ironic.
Yes, you are correct to point out that Arthur C. Clarke used the direct comparison to say there is no other book like Dune but The Lord of the Rings in terms of its scope and accomplishment.
I find it ironic that Tolkien was a little salty toward it.
You know, Brennan, you may have pointed out something that none of us have thought of before, but now maybe Arthur C. Clarke is the reason why the publisher, Lanier, actually bothered to send that first copy to Professor Tolkien in the first place.
That actually makes sense, yeah.
Yes.
Another thing I find is that Tolkien actually once said he liked Robert E. Howard's Conan story.
Tolkien liked Robert Broward, right? That's his name?
Arthur Howard.
Arthur Howard.
Yeah, the Conan.
No,
Oh,
Robert.
the creator of Conan.
Robert Howard.
Robert. Is it Robert?
Yeah, Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, Robert
the
E.
Conan
Howard.
writer.
Robert E. Howard. That is correct. Yes.
He liked those stories. And that actually makes sense because they're very similar in a way. There is a similarity between the two universes.
Yes, I agree. Hey, Brennan, I appreciate that input. Great bringing up Arthur C. Clarke. It's good to hear your voice as always. We're going to open up the line
Yes.
for more callers.
Excellent.
Okay, and I should be visiting sometime during the summer, I hope. So I hope to visit the cantina.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, at the soonest opportunity, my friend, come to the cantina. That'd be great.
Yes. Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good night, sir.
All right, so
Very nice.
so Cliff, so just on the facts, all right, we're without opinion, just on the facts.
Just the facts, ma'am.
In Tolkien's own writing, across 3 different letters to 3 different people, he has said, "I don't have time for this. I don't want to read it because it's too close to my own work, and there is a bit of jealousy in me. There may be a bit of jealousy."
When you boil it down to very, 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 you know. There's always a risk of being too reductive in these conversations, which is why I'm still trying to inject this kind of nuance into Tolkien
Right,
psychology.
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, but when you boil it down to the basics, yes, those things that you just said are true.
Okay, so those are the facts.
But
Now,
there's also the nuance of him preferring to work as a creative
yes.
in the way that most honest-to-God, true blue creative artists really like to work, without a pollution of their creative process.
They don't want to consume, they want to create.
Exactly.
And Tolkien was
given that
definitely a
given
creator.
that context to back up Mr. Professor Tolkien's stance on this. But yes, of
So
course.
so
Of
okay,
course.
let's take it to the next level because I think this is where the
And this
debate
is all
started.
fair. This is all fair to hash this out, to take the heat off the conversation.
I think this is valid because I think the facts speak for themselves, and I think Tolkien speaks for himself. Now, I think where the opinion column gets a little muddied, right, is we took it the next step. I took it the next step further, okay? First off, let's come back to 2020. This year, Dune is happening. Big feature film from Denis Villeneuve, the guy who did Blade Runner 2049.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve, who
Yes.
did Arrival,
Yes.
and he did Blade Runner 2049, was probably one of my favorite films the last 10 years.
Yes.
And now he's doing Dune. Not only is he doing a feature film, he's doing a spin-off series for Netflix.
Yes.
Dune is going to be in your face. It's going to win awards. It is going to be the most talked about fantasy movie and show in the next 2 years. It is
Yes.
going to be huge. You have no doubt that the hype for Dune right now is probably on par with Lord of the Rings.
And is it not therefore also ironic that these 2 huge properties are going to be once again in the
Filming-
marketplace together in the same time?
They're going to be in the marketplace
Now,
next
no,
year at the same time.
I want to add an additional asterisk to my statement about Professor Tolkien preferring to be insular from hearing and learning what it was that Frank Herbert.
Am I serious? Marfels, am I serious about the Dune movie? Yes.
About what Frank Herbert had going on, and when I said that Professor Tolkien preferred, like most artists do, to be insulated from that,
Yes.
it's with the exception of the bonded relationship he already had with the Inklings, who through much of his life helped him through a process of intimate friendship. It wasn't like getting influence from an outside stranger. When Professor Tolkien wanted input from other writers like Charles Williams or C.S. Lewis and others in the Inklings, or from his own son, Christopher Tolkien, famously, Tolkien would only have those carefully nurtured, very intimate, scholarly, academic relationships with people within whom he would trust that jealousy that he spoke of might not manifest, where he would operate and listen. You know, the way that he had his friends in the TCBS when he was a younger boy.
Yes.
They liked to energize each other with ideas.
Right.
But that was only among trusted friends. In a different situation from some other unsolicited author or unsolicited publisher
Look, Tolkien-
saying, here, you know, go and-
Counterpoint, Tolkien knew that Frank Herbert's Dune was coming. There was a ton of marketing hype for a year building up to it.
And this was at a point in time when The Lord of the Rings had already been way published in the 50s, in the 1950s, but this was now
54?
1954, yes, 1954.
Yes.
And now we're talking about the second edition.
65.
We're talking about the 1965
Okay,
later
so
edition
let's bring that
of
back.
The Lord of the
Okay,
Rings.
So Tolkien, we've already proven
Okay.
Tolkien wasn't interested in Dune. From multiple people saying, hey man,
Yes.
you should check this out. It's kind of cool. And Tolkien's like, I ain't got time for that. And also I might get jealous. So fast forward to August 1965 when Dune came out. What also came out? The publisher of Lord of the Rings decided we need a second edition because Dune is coming out to dominate fantasy.
Mhm.
There's going to be a renewed interest in fantasy, epic fantasy storytelling.
Yes.
The publisher said, Tolkien, can you make some revisions and give us a second edition Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
And not only that, there was such a huge bootleg industry for paperbacks.
I believe this is when young Christopher Tolkien helped his father with the new maps.
Yes.
With the new
So-
maps that we know so well, and that close-up map of Gondor in relation to the top of Mordor.
So there were
Remember that?
Lord of the Rings had two new releases in 1965.
Right.
They had the second edition hardcover Lord of the Rings with updates to the story of Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, the new maps, also
New
in
commentary, new opening.
new commentary, new prologue,
Yes.
and then in November 1965, the paperbacks come out and made Lord of the Rings accessible to all strata of people who probably couldn't afford a 3-volume book of hardcovers.
Well, hey, Sean, when that happens, and if Justin makes a slight misstep, that's why I'm here to correct him. That's why it's a
Yeah,
two-man.
that's why we're
I'm
having
doing-
this
That's why
conversation.
we're having this conversation, to make sure that we're trying to get it all right and all on the same page. So, that allowing for
Okay.
that, go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
August 1964, August 1965, Dune is released to much
Yes.
hype.
Yes.
In the
and
build-up to the hype,
deservedly so, because that novel is really quite something.
and it's one of
It's-
Cliff's favorite stories.
Yeah.
August 1965, the publisher of Lord of the Rings says, hey, there's an opportunity here. Lord of the Rings sales might have been dipped. There's a lot of bootlegging going on. So they went and released the second edition hardcover of Lord of the Rings, and they released the paperback trilogy on November 1965. So we're talking about Tolkien, who we've already determined is jealous of competing stories polluting his creative process. Now their Dune is in the marketplace with a new version at the same time. Holiday, Christmas time, 1965. In the same marketplace at the same time, there's a paperback of Lord of the Rings. There's a new second edition. What did Tolkien do for the second edition? I'll tell you some of the things.
Yes.
He added the fact that Shadowfax goes with Gandalf to the Undying Lands. It's a huge change. Huge change.
Okay.
He rewrote the entire prologue of Lord of the Rings. He also changed the dialogue of Riddles in the Dark to connect The Hobbit to Lord of the Rings a little bit more. He also determined that Galadriel's father, I believe, was Feanor.
Yes.
This was all second edition stuff that wasn't in the first edition.
But it was also to counteract the presence of Ace Publications, who we had covered all this material in our documentary, Ringer's Lord of the Fans. Ace Publications put out an unauthorized, unlicensed copy.
Paperback.
Only in paperback as a cheap. They did a quick, cheap run of a stolen book that Ace Publishers never, ever authorized or paid Professor Tolkien for, which was another strong motivation for Professor Tolkien and his real publishers to get a second edition out.
That's right.
Okay?
So, also,
Grassroots pressure from the fans became so great that Ace Books withdrew their edition and made a nominal payment to Tolkien.
they got caught, and the publisher was like, we can sue you out of existence. They're like, we'll just pay you.
There were literally protests on Berkeley campus.
Yeah, totally.
Literally.
So other things that Tolkien had changed is he tempered Aragorn's temper.
But it was also
in Lord of the Rings, the first edition, Aragorn and Gimli discuss what Aragorn says to Sauron through the Palantir, and it is a very heated exchange. And Tolkien rewrote the language that Aragorn uses to describe his conversation with Sauron through the Palantir, to temper, and the thought is to make him more heroic and not just like committing to the temptation of revenge and evil
and anger.
And anger. So Tolkien tempered Aragorn's anger
To make him be a little bit more like a Jedi and a little bit,
That's right.
okay, not so tempted by the dark side of anger.
All right. So
That's intriguing.
So we've got some pretty significant. I mean, just enough to say it's a second edition.
And also
and-
to establish an unquestioned U.S. copyright.
So the question I have to you, Cliff, is
So
what
It was both a legal business and a creative endeavor on both sides.
right.
That second edition.
Yeah, and,
Yes.
and Tolkien was irritated that he had spent too much time over too many years battling the bootlegs. There are letters of Tolkien saying at great cost and great amount of time, it has exhausted him dealing with these bootlegs and fakers. And that's one of
Yes.
the reasons he was like, let's get this paperback out as fast as possible. In fact, they wanted, Tolkien and the publisher said, we want the paperback so fast that they hired one of the hottest artists in New York at the time, saying, we need 3 covers for this paperback. By the way, we need it in 4 weeks. You don't have time to read it. That artist, Barbara Remington, who just passed this week.
Yep.
So 1965 is a critical moment
Ms. Remington
in Tolkien in Lord of the Rings.
created this controversial artwork that is still, made people poke fun at it to this day.
Well, here's
because she had not been able to read the manuscript.
they wanted the art
so fast. They
fast.
said, do the art now, and you won't even get to read the book. And you know what she said in an interview later on? She said, because Professor Tolkien took objection to the cover artwork, because he didn't understand why there were emus, and lions and emus in
and why
the
are
front
there
lawn. And
why are there white pumpkins
White
on
pumpkins
the white tree of
growing on the
Gondor?
tree. They didn't understand it. And Professor Tolkien objected to the artwork later, but poor Ms. Remington, do you know what she said?
What did she say?
If she had read the manuscript, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Let's show it. There it is. If she had read that manuscript, she would not have taken the job.
These are the covers that most people will remember as their first introduction to Lord of the Rings,
Yep.
because the hardcovers were expensive.
May she
and
rest
the
in- may
second
she rest in
edition
peace.
had been rushed. And these covers were rushed into the marketplace because Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, was dominating the fantasy book selling charts.
Yes. And
Everyone had an appetite for fantasy and world building. They're like, let's get Lord of the Rings back out. So they didn't even give her enough time to read the Lord of the Rings
they
trilogy.
did not. They didn't give her enough time to read it,
And
and
they
she honestly said she was so daunted and amazed and in awe of him.
Look
she
at
was
that art.
so in
Yes.
awe of
After
Professor
she read it.
Tolkien.
After she read
She
it.
said she would have been too intimidated by the power and scope of Tolkien for her to take her hand to attempt the artwork.
And
she would not have done the covers.
And the
That is how she revered. After she read the man's
here's the
work,
full spine.
she revered him so much, she said, I couldn't have done justice to his imagination. And she's brilliant, and may she forever rest in peace.
Here's the full.
But, it's
and
amazing.
And Cliff, not only did they not give her time to read the book
Yes.
to create work, but
Yes.
they were cheap enough. They said we can't pay you for 3 individual art. So they asked her to just paint one big trilogy, one big painting that they could cut up into a triptych. So she only painted one painting. She didn't consider 3 different books, 3 different covers. She just painted one big thing and was told it's a triptych and there's a tree.
Yes.
But why is the tree on Fellowship of the Ring and not on Return of the King? They just rushed this out.
Do you know what? To
That
be
is
honest,
what
if
Return
you
of
go
the
back to
King
the other
was.
one, I like the Two Towers one a little bit more than the 3 of them. The reason why is because there's these strange ravens flying over the spider, and the creepy spider is hiding in the mountain. And there's black riders, or what you think might be in the Two Towers, like trying to jump out of the river. And
It's
But
beautiful.
I think it's interesting, but it's so not really Tolkien.
But look at this.
In
the-
essence.
It says the authorized edition. 'Cause
And
so
there,
they
yeah,
were,
it does
they
say
were
and look,
responding.
this third one for the Return of the King must be Orodruin or Mount Doom
Yes.
in Mordor.
So they were battling bootlegs. The price was 95 cents. So
And
this
it-
was priced to compete.
And read
And-
Professor's note in the green box.
Yes.
A statement from the author about this American edition. This paperback edition and no other has been published with my consent and cooperation. Those who approve of courtesy, at least, to living authors will purchase it and no other.
So this whole book is meant to get the bootlegs out of the marketplace. And Tolkien is telling his fans, buy this, don't buy other. Now, Cliff, let's go back to Dune.
Yes, okay. Let's go back to Dune.
Casey, can you check the OBS?
Thank you. Yeah, how about that? Going back to, I do find it funny that the whole marketplace is going to be reintroduced to Dune and Lord of the Rings again at the same time. Just mirroring what happened generations ago.
So
Isn't
the
that
only
interesting?
those minuscule changes that he made to the hardcover, was just enough to get the freight.